I'm attracted to the idea of big and small, where it's like it'd be cool if like the biggest thing in the universe was won by some small company, or somebody you at least expected it. And I think when you think about, well, what would subvert expectations, or what would be the stupidest or funniest sort of like answer to this problem, I think you it generally creates better ideas.
Buzz, buzz, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode. Speaking of welcome back, I got a guest who's back again. He's been on the show several times. Every time he says stuff that's really smart and makes me think really hard, just like his books do. That's right. Yet again, let's bring him out, folks. I've got Mr. Mark Russell coming back. Oh, goodness. Oh,
Hey,
goodness.
everybody.
What is
Hello.
up, Mark? Oh, man, you have been busy in all the best ways. I feel like lots of big stuff happening with you right now.
I just wouldn't know what to do with myself otherwise. I like the fact that I get to get up and do this every day.
It is cool to work in comic books. It gets stressful sometimes, but it is a very
Yeah.
it's a neat swimming pool to be in. You know, I don't know why I went there.
You have to
Uh,
you have to remind yourself sometimes that these are the problems you always wanted to have.
yes, yeah, yeah, that's a very good point. I think there's a lot of us in life that could remind ourselves of that in numerous circumstances. Like, oh shit, we asked for this. Like that's like I think we forget stuff like that sometimes. It's funny how repetitive and cyclical like humans are, right? And I'm thinking of talking to you last year, and around the time I talked to you last year, was a little bit before Eisner nominations. I think you came on to talk about, you were on to talk about Ahoy stuff, and Second Coming's Third Coming, and you were talking, and it was shortly after that, but you were doing the Kickstarter for your like sketchbook Kickstarter, and then you got like you were Eisner nominated. You were up for Best Writer, and Traveling to Mars was up for Best New Series. You've got bigger news out right now, right? You've got big Marvel titles. You just wrapped up another huge DC work with Batman Dark Age, and you're back on Kickstarter. It's like
Yeah.
everything changes all the
Yeah.
time, but nothing changes, right?
Right. We're running to stand still. Yeah. No. Batman Dark Age. I'm about halfway through right that. I mean, I think the writing's pretty much done, but yeah, we're about three of, I think third issue just came out, and really excited for that. And yeah, it's a mirror image of where we were last year. Because last year I think I was about the same spot for Superman Space Age. And yeah, and then yeah, I was doing a Kickstarter for my cartoon book last year, and this year I'm even more excited to be doing a Kickstarter for Traveling to Mars, hardcover edition.
And it's there's several editions. By the way, there's the hardcover is the selling point. There's also like signature tip in pages, slip cases, original art. There's a lot of cool stuff you can get.
Yeah.
You can also just get a soft cover paperback and some other like Ablaze add-ons and stuff through the campaign. It's doing very well. I don't know if you've taken a look at it,
Yeah.
Reese, but
No, I was
you're
excited.
coming up on 20. You're like,
It was what's the word? It's fulfilled the very first day it went out. So I
mm-hmm.
was really gratified about that. But yeah, I'm hoping that a lot of people get the deluxe hardcover, because I feel like, to me, this is the way I would really want it to be read, like a nice
Yeah.
hardcover that sits on your shelf. And to me, the fact that they're doing this says that they really sort of value the book, that they really sort of think this is something that's going to stand the test of time, which is what I think as well, and what I'm hoping for. That this will be something people will just not just read once and then pulp, but they'll keep it on their shelves and go back to it occasionally, read it several times over the course of its lifespan on your bookshelf.
It warrants exploration. Everything about this book, as with most of your works, like warrant uh reads later on. Yeah, that's the good thing about great literature, right? It blows your mind once, and then you let it sit for a while, you read it again, and it blows your mind all over again, and like in a whole new way. There's so much in this, and everybody resonates kind of the the same way with traveling to Mars, and it's this dogmatic. It's almost gospel, right? That's kind of how this this written tome that he leaves behind feels. And you know, as the I've been told, we may spoil some stuff here, folks. By the way, the
Yeah.
series has been completed. The collection's on Kickstarter. But you know, but the end of the series, he has a flock, kind of, you know, on Mars. So, but is that crazy? Because you've studied religion a lot, and did it feel like that, or was it purposeful? Were you trying to kind of mimic gospel writing, or gospel writing for a new age? Was that accidental? Or,
Well, not the gospel specifically, but I do think that as a writer, you're doing the good stuff when you're writing about the things that really sort of obsess you or the things that really sort of haunt your life. And that's kind of your goal as a writer is to sort of like exercise yourself of the things you really care about. And I feel like this is one of the things that like recurs in my work because it's something that sort of haunts my life is yeah, um, the biblical and religious upbringing I had and how I've had to wrestle through that, as well as like struggling to find meaning in my own mortality without, you know, if you don't take the easy crutch that the religion you were raised in provides you, what do you then fill the void with? What then do you look to give your brief aegis on planet Earth some meaning? And I think that's largely what this book is about. It's like, where do we find meaning now that we're facing the end? And I feel like you can ask yourself that question as a human being, as we all must at some point, and also as a civilization. You know,
mm,
it's like I think it's the kind of one thing everyone seems to sort of sense is that this things can't continue this way forever. We're even though we're still having a good time, more or less, we're sort of circling the
thanks
drain,
for
and
adding that
everybody,
in.
regardless of their political persuasion, seems to sort
Yeah.
of understand that. So it is sort of like, well, now that we're circling the drain, what was it all about?
Roy knows what it's all about. Like there's something just achingly beautiful about this, and it hurts because like I've been doing a lot of writing lately, and it's a different kind of writing, but I also know that like I'm never going to be able to write something like this, which is like both
Well,
inspiring because it's like, but I'll try, but also like, yeah, I don't know, man. I've been a big fan of you for a while, and finally finishing these 11 issues. It did.
well,
I ugly cried, dude. I was
uh,
there were a couple times like it got me, but like the fucking toe. Oh my god. Oh my god. We're jumping the gun to the end, but
yeah,
you
I
did some
wasn't sure how
great
people are
stuff,
going to
man.
react to that, whether they're going to be moved by that or whether they're going to be like, really, a severed toe?
I thought that was the most romantic fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. It made so much sense. And it was the whole, I won't spoil the line and the reasoning of why the toe is there, because that was the samurai level gut punch that like just squeezed the tears out of me like a dish sponge, like after doing dishes after dinner, man. Like, oh man. But it worked. I'm glad you went there. If you wrestled with that, like knowing that toe might not have been there would have been a big bummer, I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, and you know, and I feel like I have that same feeling too, where I like read something somebody else wrote, and I'm just like, oh man, this is so moving, and I could never write something like this. But it really isn't that, you know, they're great and I'm shit. It's more just like this is the flavor of ice cream that person is,
Mm.
and I'm just a different flavor of ice cream, and that's great. That's, you know, we should all be, you know, representing inside the Baskin Robbins, you know, not necessarily worrying about whether or not we're all salted caramel, but whether or not we're providing a flavor that's different than the other ones in the
That is
store.
true. That is true. Ice cream wouldn't be as good if it all tasted the same.
No, yeah, imagine even your favorite flavor, you wouldn't want to go to like a Baskin Robbins and find 31 barrels of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We often want universality in a lot of things, right? You know, it's something that like
Yeah, I've never understood that. It's like, oh, this, you know, this is the benchmark and you know, or it was know this, or people reading things expecting it to be this other thing that they just already had.
mm,
It's like, no, it's not like a restaurant where it's like you go get the prime rib and the prime rib's going to be the same every time. It's, you know, like it's more like listening to music. It's
mm,
where it's like, yeah, you don't want you don't want your favorite band to just release this a digital copy of the last album
Yeah.
they released. You know, you want them to like take some chances.
Yeah. I love risks. Especially in this, in this medium, where marketability is, even though, you don't want to think about it, it is something that you got to think about, right? And a lot of these, there's some places don't restrict you, not in a menacing way, but just like, they know, like, okay, this is a good idea, but maybe that won't sell, right? So, still having like the urge to like take those risks and take those chances and put those toes in a cooler, whatever you got to do to get there.
I like that this is becoming a metaphor. Putting the toe in the cooler.
This you're gonna be the your this is what your legacy is.
Yeah.
Hey, if
Sometimes you
traveling
just
to
got to put a
Mars,
toe in the cooler.
if traveling to Mars was a I don't know. It may be my favorite of yours. Like Flintstones was really up there. That was special. But like so was this, man. I mean, but I also know, like, I don't know, you keep pumping out the jam. So like this is blowing my mind right now, but then it's also like, damn, what's he gonna do next year? Like
Yeah,
no
I
pressure.
feel like this is one of the best things I've ever written, and I feel like when you do something like that, the worst sort of impulse you can have is to think, oh, well, now I've got to top it,
Mm,
or oh, I got to
yeah.
make traveling to Mars extreme or something. It's like I feel like you need to sort of just do the next thing that you
Yeah.
are this next story idea you had, the next thing that you're thinking about, even though it might not be as epic, especially if it's not as epic. You want to like I think mix it up so that you're thinking about all kinds of scales of stories, and you're not just like trying to you're not trying to like always make your Sergeant Peppers or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that. That's smart. And I think a lot of new creators or even seasoned creators that hear that, that's good to hear, because that I make that joke a lot. To people on the show when it was especially like when they drop something that like really impresses me, but it's like, so what's next, and I
Yeah.
say it as a joke, but I also know that they're probably like, wow, thanks, but but I mean, unfortunately, especially in this industry, and you've been living it for a while, right? You do have to often think about what's next. You often, to survive as a writer
Mm.
or artist in this industry,
Right.
you all have to have several projects going simultaneously.
Well, and that
And
question is usually what tells you what's next. It's like, well, what's next is the next thing I'm being paid for, and the thing that got greenlit.
yeah.
So it might not have anything to do, or it might not be even remotely similar to the thing that you just published. It
Hmm.
could be a radically different just because that's what just happened to get greenlit in the queue of ideas you've had. And I frankly like that. I like the fact that, it's like I'm working on very different projects at the same time. I could do a Batman comic at the same time I'm doing Traveling to Mars, at the same time I'm writing a comic about a silent film star. I like not having the same part of my brain like taxed every day, being able to sort of rotate the crops a little bit.
Yeah. And while you're doing all that, what is it? My Bad is coming back. This is the what, third volume of My Bad,
Yeah,
right?
third volume. And the good thing about writing my bed is I only have to write half of it because my friend Bryce Ingman co-writes the other half. So he does the like half the stories.
Okay.
And that's one of the things I think is kind of refreshing about it is that I'm only having to write half this book. So a lot of the pressure's off, and it's also the most overtly funny thing
Yeah.
that I do. So it's also kind of the pressure's off. I don't have to make these grand sort of statements or, really sort of plumb the depths of my soul for this one. It could just be goofy. It could just be, the craziest shit I could think of.
I was gonna ask if that like kind of helps as like me- call it like a palate cleanser, or just that kind of, when you get to be raunchy like that, tell those kind of jokes, have that kind of fun. And Ahoy seems to, put you in a car with no brakes, right? And they let you steer and accelerate and don't hold you back. It is that's how hopefully that's true. That's how it feels.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun, and it's probably the most fun title. Great, good, the most fun I have writing is writing my bad, not only because I'm doing it with a good friend, but also because it's just wacky, and
Yeah.
that and it's yeah, it's like realizing you're a car with no brakes, and instead of panicking, realizing that the best thing to do is just to speed up even more.
Now you are like, it's very hard to be funny in a comic, I think.
Oh yeah. No,
I've
it's
heard.
weird because they're called comics, but you almost never encounter funny comics.
Yeah,
You rarely encounter comics that want to be funny, but even more rarely do you encounter comics that actually are.
but you've kind of excelled in you know going through these narratives, like even in some heavier titles, you still like, you land like some really great great humor. And then in books like My Bad, you were able to come out and just like do terrible things to the rich, like we all kind of want to, right? And we laugh with you and we're like in on this joke. uh just among the things that that you're very good at, it's so endearing that you can, write like comic dogma, and then also like make poop and fart jokes, and like let's eat the rich jokes, and it's and then hop back over to this new like one shot from AWA, which is this really intriguing critique on modern culture and our reliance on social media, and coming back to that notion of like universality and sameness. Like I really dug your thoughts on that, and this idea of like a hive mind, like a unified knowledge kind of thing. Like I was like, that I hadn't seen social media through that lens until I read Death Ratioed. And like, Mark, there's not a lot of writers out there that can challenge readers in a narrative like that. Make us laugh like that, make us cry like that, make us believe in parts of humanity that we almost forgot about because how hopeless things seem sometimes. You seem
Well,
to do that
thanks.
effortlessly, and it's disgusting.
Well,
But
thank you. No, and I know I write a lot of pessimistic shit, but I do also try to imbue it with hope.
yeah,
I
there's
never
always
try
light.
to write something that where it's just like, well, it's bleak and we should probably just all, drive off a cliff. I always want there to be like, well, no, but here is like a potential solution, or these characters, they may not all survive, but some of them will. And I really, really want to write stories not only about the horrors that our civilization and its institutions pose, but also about how we survive them. And I think that this is ultimately, even when the characters die, what I'm ultimately writing are stories of human survival.
Holy shit. All right, this is why I like doing not live stuff, because when I get a guest like you and you say things, and I start like, I'm like thinking now of like all the comics I've read by you, and that is like it's that's so like Deridian, like when you strip down the house to everything but the studs, right? And the studs there is a survival narrative, but then you build around it,
Yeah.
and you build the walls, and add the wires and the pipes and the insulation and furnishings and stuff, right? And you build around it, and you don't know. That's crazy. That's wow. Is that ever does that ever hinder you, or do you ever like worry about that going in, where like it seems like something you're like, oh, I got this crazy idea, and then you're like, wait, it's a tale of survival? Or are you like, is it are all tales, I guess, tales of survival if you break them down hard
Well, I
enough?
think that they are if you're approaching them that way, if you're approaching them like this is not just about these people as victims, or this is not just like we're not just laughing at the misfortune of these people, but we genuinely care about these characters and we want them to be okay, even though we know they might not be in the story. And I think a lot of it boils down to my critique of human beings and human civilization is largely that we are not allowed to survive the way that we evolved to survive. Like human bodies evolved primarily to walk and to think, and human societies generally survived or generally evolved to help each other's, as like small familial networks, to
Mhm.
like help each other problem solve and to help each other do for other people what they cannot do for themselves, and realizing that we're going to need someone to help us. And I feel like this everything, all my critiques come back to like how our institutions and our creature comforts have allowed us to sort of pretend that that's not what we need, have allowed us to sort of get away from the very core fundamentals of why we evolved as a species. And I think when you do that, you begin to become like a dog who's kept in like a dog carrier for 20 hours a day,
Mm.
or like a it's like you when you aren't allowed to do the things or to act the way with other people and with yourself the way you physically evolved to do so. That's when you start to feel disgruntled. That's when you start to feel like you've that life was a mistake. And so a lot of my critiques are about that, about how we are not allowed to live the lives we actually physically are meant to live.
Whoa, dude, that's crazy. That reminds me, going back to your books, if we're here to talk about conveniently, but you kind of get into that at the end of Death Ratio, which came out this week. So it's new. It's this new one shot from AWA. Really, everybody listening, if you haven't checked it out, really encourage you to do so. Really strong one hitter, and it's 6.99, I think, but it's a nice
Yeah,
chunky
it's like
good read. Like,
40, I think 43 pages or something.
yeah,
So
it's
it's
a
really
good,
two comic books
yeah,
put into
it's a two
one.
for the price of one. But and I really I want to go back to the format because I really dug that, like just your style in that kind of like that explosive one shot was rad. Um, but you get into this notion of how like why we evolved and how we we learn to think differently because of the environments around us are harsh and don't really care if we're here or not, and then we like built these spaces for us that are like, every like we built like a safe space on a on a, oh my god, I can't talk, on a unstable foundation. Fuck, there it is. Which is the planet, right?
Yeah.
The planet doesn't, we are a speck of history in the magnitude of how long this planet's been here, right? And it doesn't really care if we're happy or not, because we sure as shit don't care about the planet. So like, why should it care about us? But that really intrigued me. I was like, wow, yeah, like everything we've built to like protect ourselves is essentially like useless because we can't control like every outside circumstance, even though we try to, which
Right.
which
The
usually
thing that
ends terribly for humanity. We try too
Right,
hard.
the thing that's been resonant about the human species, the reason why we have been able to survive, all despite the fact that we are not really biologically suited for any environment in particular, is the fact that we're adaptive. The fact
Mm,
that we've always like, well, okay, we're not evolved for, tundra, but we can make spears and, create carve for ourselves and like flint knives and make ourselves fur coats. Or, we're not evolved for living in water, but we can make boats and, spearfishing and
mhm.
we can get around our biological limitations. And that's really what has been our how our civilization or how our species has been able to survive. And I think late stage human civilization, particularly as it pertains to social media and all of our sort of digital creations and nation states, have had the opposite effect. They've had the effect of making us less adaptive, which to me is the human race deciding that it's time to commit suicide.
That's like I say this jokingly but kind of seriously, it's the Wally phenomenon, right? Is we're all like you said, like our bodies were made to walk around and our minds were made to think, but look at where most of, like, almost all of us all day are, we sit in a chair and stare at a computer and think how the people who pay us want us to think. Like, it's,
Yeah,
ooh, I don't
the
like that. I don't like that thought now. Like,
no, the demands of civilization, and particularly post-industrial civilization, are kind of the opposite of our of what we need as biological beings, because they need us to specialize in niche like tasks.
mm,
And really the best way to survive as a human in civilization is to be really good at one niche task and to sit still long enough to do that enough times that you are not really doing much else. And whereas human survival is always based upon knowing a thousand tasks, being able to do anything and adapt to any situation. So in a way, we're sort of engineering ourselves for extinction by over specialization and by forcing us into these really niche roles. Uh, the promise of AI, to the extent there is any promise, would be that if it could liberate us from the quotidian demands of everyday labor, of everyday work, that we could then return to our natural state of, assigning ourselves a myriad of tasks that we find, sort of interesting, and that allowing us to sort of adapt to the day-to-day demands of our interior lives.
Hmm.
And that would be a great sort of thing to have happen, that we would hit the next level of sort of human evolution by we are like we were when we were hunter-gatherers. We are adaptive and constantly thinking and on the move and adapting to new tasks and new challenges. But the challenges aren't necessarily survival based. They're not that we're going to die out if we don't figure out a way to kill a mammoth, or if we don't find out how to, like, avoid snakes. It could be more like we're creating, we're adapting to solve the challenges that we find interesting, that we're adapting to work on things that give our lives meaning, to create art or science, or to do the things that we will die if we don't complete them, but that we will live even more meaningful lives if we do. That's
Yeah.
my hope. Well, I'm not very hopeful. I'm not very optimistic that that's where AI will lead us, just because, but less so much because of the technology than more because of the ownership model,
Mhm.
where everyone who seems to own massive AI engines seems to be interested in really in just sort of like stealing value from everybody else
Yep.
who's doing labor in other areas that AI can duplicate. So it's not really about liberating humans from quotidian labor. It's more about stealing the meager proceeds of that labor from human beings.
Yeah, there's definite promise there, but yeah, the way things are right now, and then I know well, with all the social media weirdness and now all the new like Instagram stuff and everybody's moving over to Kara and all this stuff, and then I think what Tula Lote dropped something today. It was how to turn your Instagram not private, but to like keep you out of the Meta AI program thing. I don't
Oh
know.
yeah,
Like it's yeah, it's I understand why everyone's freaking out. And or not.
yeah.
It's mainly like the artist. I don't draw. I write. And I most of my writing is like I get paid to do a lot of copywriting, like Kickstarter updates. I work on campaign pages and like I do puff pieces and reviews and stuff at Geek Network, but like that's still not, I'm not getting the like I'm not really telling stories, right? So like if someone's gonna steal my hype voice, I guess go you take it, like use my model to sell your book. I don't know, like that's all I'm good for. But if I was putting art out there, or the fact that I could pull up one of those generator things, right, and be like, draw me Superman and Batman holding hands in a playground in a style akin to Alex Ross, and it would spit out a fucking image that will never look as good as Alex Ross, but you can tell is borrowing from
Yeah,
a collected database of his work. Like that, I
right.
I do see a huge problem in that, and
Well,
and yeah,
yeah,
it's a
this is
bummer.
like, I think, part of why, AI promises to become more of a mediocrity engine than anything else,
Mm.
because the uh the the ownership models that see, like, not necessarily this is going to be the best product, but it is the best uh value because it's the best that I don't have to pay for. So even if it's like maybe 30% as good as an Alex Ross image, if you're paying 0% of Alex Ross's salary
Yeah.
to get it, it's still like value wise a net win. You're better off having
Hmm.
an image that's 30% as good as Alex Ross without having to pay Alex Ross than you are, getting the full
Yeah.
Alex Ross. And I think this is what artists and writers and creators are having to do, is to sort of like create our own sort of medieval guilds, our own sort of bespoke environments
Yeah.
where what is valued is the best possible thing you can do.
Now
And that means probably abandoning uh the capitalist avenues through which we previously sold our art.
yeah. Well, yeah, and everybody's scrambling, always looking for like the next big thing. And you know, I've talked to several people, and I've been saying it. And the other day, Matthew Rosenberg said it too, and that made me feel pretty good. And I was like, well, man, maybe I'm right, because Matt is a smart guy. But he was talking about, he said the same thing. He was like, I'm not doing Kara. He was like, we do this podcast now, and I gotta put it out on Facebook and Substack and everywhere. And he was like, I'm not doing another one. He was like, I spend so much time doing this, it takes away from my
Yeah,
creative energy.
I understand the impulse to move away from Instagram to Kara, but part of the problem is that yeah, there's just social media fatigue. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, another platform. It's like everyone feels like they just got done sort of exiling themselves from Twitter. You know, it's like, oh, there's yet
Even
another
though
one
we're
I
all
gotta.
still there.
Yeah,
But no, I'm with
musical
you.
chairs.
I said it today. I laughed. I took a picture of Bruce with my dog, and it was a funny picture. It made me laugh, and it was like he was totally judging me. You could tell by this picture,
Yeah,
like, and I was like, by the time I posted that 6 different places, I was like, I don't like this fucking picture anymore. I was like,
yeah.
and
No, nothing will, familiarity breeds contempt. I go through that. It's like when I'm writing a script, because by the time, it's like it's ready for the artist. I've read it, rewritten it like 5 or 6 times, it
mm.
feels like. And it's like I don't even know if this is good anymore. I don't know. I don't know if I would want to read this. Um, Luckily, your brain cells recover and you get to the point where it's time for the lettering pass, or you get your comps in the mail and you read it again, having not like touched it for like 5 or 6 months.
Mm.
And then you can see, oh no, this was actually good, or oh, this is what I originally saw in it. But yeah, there's just the problem is that the more time you spend with, your work, the less, the more it just becomes gibberish to you.
Yeah. Very, yeah, it's been like it's for the day job at the studio. Like we have to like check print files and stuff for a lot of the covers and stuff we send out. And there's like we have to put like print counts on there and URLs and specific logos. We got to check all that shit, and it's just like
Right.
there's sometimes 3 of us, but we see it so much and we look at it and we have to like, okay, send it. Okay, do you like this? Do you like the logo? Do you like the trade placement? But you see it so many times as you start getting to where you're like, I missed a mistake. It looked okay, and so yeah, that's I definitely see that too. Like editing, I see it in my own writing too, and it's because you especially when you like it, kind of you like write something, you're like, oh cool, and then it's so hard to like note. It's real easy to see a comma when someone else fucks it up.
Yeah.
When I don't put the comma in the right place, my mind just my mind's like, no, you're perfect, you're good. So I always wondered that, like writers I really like how, and especially when you write like really intense stuff like you do sometimes, how much you edit yourself.
Yeah.
Typical draft. Like, do you have a ton of drafts? Do you go back a lot and look at
I
the stuff?
do. I What I try to do is like when I find myself going back to changing it the way I had before, I try to stop.
Oh,
Say if you're changing it back and forth, they're probably both equally or more or less good, and you just need to pick one and move on with your life. That's how I sort of keep myself from overwriting or wasting time on something that's pretty much done, that I just need to sort of be willing to give over to the universe and move on
mm,
to the next thing. Uh, but yeah, I generally do 2 or 3, and what I'm looking for are, I used to sort of like, well, I've got to get this line just perfect, or I got to get this dialogue just perfect. I'm less about that anymore. I'm more about just like, are all the beats that this story needs in the story? And the
okay.
lines themselves, or the writing itself, the dialogue, I kind of want it to feel a little raw. I want it to feel like more like this is the way I heard it in my head when it first occurred to me, and not be trying to be so perfect. But
Okay.
now my rewriting is more about like, is there more information I could tell in this image? Is this panel good, or is this panel moving the story along, or are there pages I can get rid of?
Mm. What what was the hardest thing for you in traveling to Mars? Like what I don't either the situation or like Roy as a character or the love story, the loss. that ache, that, I mean, you haven't died, right? So like, we all have that fear of dying alone, but never, I don't know, maybe you have, I don't know, but like I
Yeah.
haven't like faced that like Roy has, like, like, so
No,
the
I
whole
haven't
time
either.
so yeah, like, so okay, that's crazy. God, but I almost was wondering, like, was Mark ever like sick or what? But
I mean, I
I'm
have.
glad you weren't, and I'm glad you're here,
Yeah,
by the way. But so yeah,
but
what was difficult about this for you? What'd you struggle with?
well, for me, the hard part was kind of not that stuff. I mean, that was the stuff that was coming natural to me that I was like thinking about. The hard part was like, how do I continue to make this a story? How do I
Hmm.
continue to like, you know, tell this within the context of a story and not just it be about this guy and his sort of morose, sort of self-flagellation over regrets. In a lot of ways, that's kind of what was also the part that kept me focused was like the more that this is a story with, things changing in a situation and he's heading towards Mars and finally gets to Mars, that was sort of what told me what I should be talking about in that issue. Because I
Mhm.
wanted the things that he's going through internally and the things he was thinking about his life on Mars to have some relevance to what he was actually going through on board the ship or what he was things he was experiencing with the rovers while, his relationships with them being some way resonant to other people's relationships with him while he was on Earth.
This is yet again, you've written some very complex and wildly fascinating robotic characters. And of course you did that and not all robots. And which my friends on First Issue Club, one of the co-hosts said when they talked about this back in the day, they were like, no, you're saying it wrong. Like they kept saying that it was like, it's not all robots, like they it was like they put the accent on it, and I was like, it made us all laugh. But you write them humanely, but also, not like there's moments, we see like a fear of death, right, with the rovers, which we see PTSD with the rovers, the great lie, which is so random and chaotic, and I loved it. That's all I'll say. Again, I don't want to spoil like too much for anybody who backs this and gets to like read it all for the first time. But what is it about? What is it about you and like what is it about robots that intrigue you? Is it like the inevitability, like because we are going to exist and interact with them like more and more as the years go by, or is there something else?
I think it's less that than it is just that they're useful as a metaphor for ourselves, that
Hmm.
we suddenly are activated one day and all we know is what we've been programmed to believe. And the people that we look to as our creators or as the people that we look to for information may not be the best, most reliable sources of information. And so it's about them having to learn these things for themselves, like who you could trust, who you can't trust, what dying means, what it is to want something, listening to a story for the first time and having that be the only story you've ever heard and the sort of how you would need to make this story much more about in traveling to Mars, a story about an outlaw kangaroo in the Old West. But this has such meaning to the rovers because it's the only movie they've ever seen.
Hmm.
So they retell this story amongst themselves like it's the Epic of Gilgamesh or something. But sort of how that is a mirror of what we go through in life.
Yeah, it very is. It very much is, and that's that again, like that the whole like Messiah complex kind of thing. Like we kind of see in the end with how the robots interact with Roy. Which really I don't really know. I mean, and there is kind of like a Ten Commandment moment in the end, where he's like, these are take these rules and go forth and live, and I thought that was
Yeah.
really cool. I also loved that one of them was like, if you see us again, run. And I was like, I thought that was like the most, probably like one of the most kind thing. Like, I don't know, all this stuff, like, I don't know that like there will ever be a human as good as Roy. Like, the whole book was just so selfless, like I think I'm an all right person, dude, but if I was dying, I would not be thinking about these robots. I would not be making promises like you won't ever have to go out there again, buddy. Like I wouldn't.
Well, I think in a lot of ways it's the fact that he's dying that is like kind of made him. I don't think he's saintly by any means.
Mhm.
But the fact that he's dying has sort of shown him what the real stakes are. And the stakes are,
Mm.
it's like it's over for him. He doesn't have to really worry about himself. What he really should be focused on is everything around him, everything that's going to survive after he's gone. And so it makes him a better human being, the realization that he's dying and that really his life is just to facilitate. He's just sort of like turning, trying to keep the store running for the next shift.
Yeah, for the I still like the whole I mentioned your humor, right? And there's humor in traveling to Mars, but it's a different kind of humor, right? It's like a trickling quirk of the sadness of humanity, the sadness of I don't know. I don't want it to sound like that hopeless, but there's a trickle of humor, and a lot of that is in Roy's dealings with, like, like corporate America, and like who's paying to send him to Mars, right? And like, hey, claim Mars for the fucking beef factory, right? Like this that whole deal of like, and it's not even beef, it's plant beef, right? It's the
Yeah,
impossible meat.
fake beef. Yeah.
And was that I'm learning the more I read from you that nothing is like ever nothing ever feels accidental, right? But like, what was that was like a big joke, I feel like, but it was also a joke, but it was also very like modern and real and kind of anchoring to like, there's a giant space elevator. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of like, I'm like, okay, I'll go with it. But for some reason, man, like that, the joke and the rich fake beef people funding all this, I was like, that kind of makes sense. Like, like, how did that, like, tell me about like your brainstorming process, your writer process. Like, how do these little moments, which is where a lot of your narratives shine, like, how did these little things come to you, these little nuggets that you drop in?
Yeah, it's just sort of trial and error, and a lot of it is that I'm attracted to the idea of big and small, where it's like it'd be cool if like the biggest thing in the universe was won by some small company, or somebody you at least expected it. And I think when you think about, well, what would subvert expectations, or what would be sort of the stupidest or funniest sort of like answer to this problem, I think it generally creates better ideas more than just like, well, this is the obvious sort of solution to this problem.
Mhm.
It's like, what is the one that's maybe not obvious, but that would just seem really dumb or or hard to believe if it were true. And that's usually story-wise the best one.
Nice. Now, I want to take a lot of these again. If people that are listening, by the way, if you haven't already figured out that like Traveling to Mars is one of my favorite books, it's probably going to be one of my favorite books like ever. Because like Lock and Key used to be my go-to. Like, this is a great comic to read to just really see what comics can do. If it was a slightly like older, more advanced reader, I would throw this to him. I would be like, you want to see, like, oh, you really want to see what comics can do? Like, read Traveling to Mars, like, like, because it's accessible. Someone mentioned, when we were talking about it on social media today, like, someone was like, so many people complain about like wordy comics, and it's like, oh, I got to read all that, and they were
Yeah.
like, but in this, like, everything I read, I just wanted to read more, and it's like when Roy starts talking and when Roy's writing in his journal, is like, I do want the, I love the art in this, all the art is gorgeous, and the robot designs are great, and the ship design, and when we get to Mars, and I loved the joke. I sent it to my buddies in Arizona, when he's like, Mars is pretty cool for an hour. It's basically like walking around Arizona in a beekeeper suit. I mean, again, like, these little moments that are so like funny, And I think again, I think the reason they're so funny is because you anchor us in these weird scenarios where like, yeah, I'm like, I will pretty sure I'm never going to be on the surface of Mars. But you've
Let's
attached
hope.
me there. Yeah, yeah, right. Like it'd have to be pretty weird for us to end up on Mars
Yes,
somehow.
some things probably would have to go very wrong for somebody.
I like how you're looking up, like waiting for like don't jinx it. No. um, but yeah, like with your humor and the complexity that you bring to your narratives, the philosophy, religion, societal critique, all these things that you like that you can pack into these stories, and they never feel like distracting. They always, everything hits with a purpose and it feels right where it needs to be. So I am very excited that you're going to be going over to X-Men and you're going to be bringing this you're going to be bringing this Racelian vibe. I don't know, is that we how is that how you'd say it?
Is
I
that
don't
an
know.
adjective now? Yeah.
But like what part of Mark Russell are you most excited to like bring into the world of mutants? Like what, you know, I know, like I said, I know you can't obviously like tell us, spoil too much, but what, this is a big deal for your career, but a big deal for a comic book nerd and a fan and a reader, which you are too. So like, what's what's going on in your mind thinking of X Factor?
Well, first of all want it to be more than anything just sort of a fun read. I want it
Okay.
to be something because the idea is it's going to be an ongoing, and they're 20 pages each. So I want Above and Beyond to be something that somebody who's maybe a past fan of X Factor or X-Men to sort of recognize. It's like, oh, this is an X-Men comic. It's like
Mm.
these people have like sort of they form friendships, they form romances, they have falling outs, and it's more about the relationships of the characters. And I want that to be sort of the glue that keeps the series together. But beyond that, I want it to be largely about how sort of expecting everything to be entertainment is sort of disastrous, and also expecting, people to expecting people to do what's best for the institutions in their lives as opposed to the people they know and love. People expecting people to choose a flag or a banner over the people that they actually care about will only lead to pain and betrayal.
There it is. That's what I was like so excited for. I was like, I knew you were gonna come in deep, and you were gonna come in surgical with a scalpel and cut a. This metaphor may not play out, but like cut a wound in it, right? To where we can like really like get under the flesh of it. That I was very excited for you to write mutants and for you to be a part of this. I also am just it's a wild time to be an X-Men fan. Like the new books they keep announcing, um borderline overwhelming, but also the talents that are all attached to this new reboot. How excited like Gail Simone is out there championing the release and everything. Everybody's crying because Krakoa is ending, but I think there's some happy tears too that we're
Yeah.
excited about. Where it's all going. Is there a nervousness in the Marvel office, because no matter what anyone says about Krakoa, it united a lot of Marvel fans, and it brought in a lot of new X-Men readers that were, it tried to kind of kill that intimidation of like, yeah, there's almost 700 issues before this, but
Yeah. Well, I
you
think
can
that,
dive
yeah, I
in.
mean, Krakoa was great, and but I think this is what happens when you are that successful with a run,
Mm.
is at some points begins to overcomplicate itself, and it becomes more about like all these sort of characters and storylines you brought in. And so no matter how good it is, it's eventually you just need to just sort of like smash the game board and start over, just
Okay.
so you could begin with the simple building blocks and begin around these base relationships. uh it's just like this is the cyclical nature of storytelling, especially when you're telling long form sort of comic stories about characters that have been around for a long time. occasionally you just need to cleanse the palate. You just need to start over.
Nice. I agree. I don't have a problem. I'm not like a slut to canon, you know. I know a lot of people are. I know it's important. But you know, like my brain doesn't work like that. Like I don't retain facts like water. You know, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't remember, like, you know, like I'm not one of those people that's like, oh wait, well, Storm did this in issue 211. You know, I will never, I just can't. I love comics, I love reading.
Yeah,
I
there are
can't.
people who enjoy that, and I don't mean to demean them. I mean, there's really no wrong way to enjoy a comic book. You
Mhm.
know, if that's what you're into, that's great. But I've never really found that personally like very conducive to good storytelling. And what I really want above and all, above and beyond everything, is just like show me some characters I care about and tell a good story using them.
Nice.
And all the other stuff, the sort of the gravel filling of like canon, or this is like just tidbits of with characters we haven't seen for a long time. All, you know, that sort of Easter egg hunt doesn't really mean very much to me as a reader.
Nice. Nice. I like that. Again, I respect it too. Like I, my buddies, a lot of my buddies are like that with sports, right? Like they start rattling off. I'm a diehard Chiefs fan, and it's been amazing the last 4 years. But I can't tell you how many touchdowns Patrick Mahomes has thrown in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Like a lot, but I don't know the exact number. So you know, like there's some people just retain that knowledge. But you said something interesting, and I was wondering if it was a challenge for you. You mentioned the structure of it all and how, you know, Marvel is a little bit more strict in their page length, right? Like you said 20, is either 20 or 22 pages or so. Like, um, you know, you've obviously in your indie work, a lot of times you get to play with that. You get to go a little bit longer, if you need to, right? And then even in DC with the DC work you've been doing, like those have been chunkier issues. You know, you're
Yeah.
so like, is that are you having to like not necessarily rewire your brain, but has that been like a different thought process in structuring the issues and adhering to their page length requirements?
Yeah, it's very different. I mean, I'm used to adhering to page length requirements, but the thing I think is different about X Factor than other things I've worked on is that the page limit is smaller, 20
Mhm.
pages, and also it's an ongoing. So the story you're telling, conversely, is longer. So it's a lot more little chapters,
Okay.
which is interesting. But yeah, it's very different because, you know, something like Batman Dark Age, the chapters are 40 pages long, and it's only 6 issues. So it's fewer, very long sort of chunks of story, whereas X Factor is kind of the opposite. It's
Mm.
a longer story, but it's a ton of tiny little chapters.
Is that do you do that? I mean, it kind of help when you start plotting and pacing, right? Like it kind of like, you know, you like, you think about it kind of like a page turn, right? Like, you know, where to end and where to, like, you know,
Yeah.
come back next month, you know. And a lot of times it makes it too, it kind of makes it a little bit easier to, you know, get people in to get that second issue that they're, you know, because you the cliffhangers are hard sometimes, but if they're real hard, you're buying that issue next month, you know, like if
And it's sort of liberating in a way because it's you don't feel like everything has to be completely explained in 20 pages. You can have a
mm,
character show up and do something and then leave, knowing that the audience understands that this is an ongoing and they might not be back for 3 or 4 issues, and that's
okay.
okay.
What has surprised you about writing X Factor? Like who, like, was there like a character where you were like, I'm so excited to write this person, but then like you ended up getting way excited writing somebody, you know, like what's been something like a good surprise, not like
I
a
think one of the biggest surprise for me, the biggest difference from what I've worked before is just how collaborative it is with
mm,
other writers, like how other writers in the X-Men universe, like we see email threads all the time. It's like updating us on what's going on with their characters or letting, you know, warning us, you know, what's
mm,
happening to, you know, Charles Xavier and stuff. Uh, and then all, yeah, there's a Discord, but to me, it's like because I'm used to working in isolation, like one complete isolation. Just I'm on a desert island until I am ready to send a script out. So to have everyone kind of constantly talking about this, one, it makes me feel like maybe I am. I'm unqualified for this job because I feel like I'm pulling out into traffic for the first time. But two, it also is just like, kind of cool to me to see how much everyone is into this.
Nice.
How this is not like drudgery to anybody involved. Everyone's really excited for it.
That's cool. That because I'm really excited for it, man. I won't lie. I asked my boss. I asked Geek Network for a pull budget to pull all the X-Men books to cover it, and they said no, Blake. We
Oh,
don't we don't have a lot of money. It was I said it as a joke, but I do think I'm gonna it's gonna be hard not to pull. It's gonna be hard not to pull them. I don't have room for so I would go digital, right, and then buy the hardcovers or omnibuses later probably. But I think I'm gonna have to pull them. I think just from a press perspective, like
yeah.
too many people are talking about it, too many big names are attached to
You
it,
gotta
and it's
you gotta be informed.
yeah,
The press has
you got to
gotta
be on it.
know what they're talking about.
And just but also
So,
like nerd me's, I'm
yeah.
stoked. Like I'm
But I
pumped.
think that's how you justify it. It's like, oh well, if it were up to me, I would be more selective. But the journalist has to have all of these
There we
and
go.
the variant covers.
And like, thanks for throwing that in when I was like, I'm probably going to go
Yeah.
digital. I had that problem for the Krakoan saga. Um, Before David Nakayama started doing covers for Marvel and DC regularly, he did a lot of store exclusive, retailer exclusive covers, and I used to buy those all the time. So for like a lot, I got addicted to a lot of these like X-Men retailer exclusive covers. So all these X books are coming out, and then I'm like, let's spend $20 an issue on them buying, and it was like, it was not a sustainable habit, Mark.
No,
I have a lot of cool variants around from that saga.
that's great.
But yeah, I'm really excited, and like I said, when I got that press email and saw you were attached to it, I got big excited again. And then I like get Gail and all these people doing big things at Marvel. Like I'm just I think 2024 is gonna be great. 2025 is gonna be great. I can't wait to see what all you guys bring. And then I as always I'm always excited to see what else you do on the side because I even though I love what you've done at DC. I'm so excited to see what you bring to the mutants and that giant amazing sandbox. But dude, your indie comics like do something special. I mean, I'm not trying to like goose you up or be cheesy, but like you tell some stories that really need to be told. Um, Death Ratio, like it's just that's like hit resonated with me a lot. Just because of my job and stuff, it's very hard to escape social media. Um, and but yeah, like you have a way of like telling people things they need to hear while entertaining them, while not making us feel stupid. And that is a talent that I don't see a lot in any medium. And so like, you know, I really I hope Marvel and DC let you get weird sometimes and but if not, like I hope like I hope you still find time to do cool indie stuff, man, because
Well, thank you.
you do these real cool stories that the world needs them, baby. I'm gonna say it. I'll die on that hill. The world needs them. We need you.
Well, thank you very
Please.
much. That's very nice.
You're very welcome, and you're also you're very kind. I appreciate you giving me time. Because several you've been on the show several times. It's always an absolute ridiculous joy to talk to you. We talked about social media and we talked about the ever changing landscape. Where's the best place to keep track of you? Are you doing like a newsletter or Substack or anything these days? Like,
I'm not. I keep meaning to start one, but the actual writing keeps getting in the way.
mhm.
But eventually there will be a newsletter. But for now, you can follow me on Blue Sky or on Threads or on Instagram. And my handle's at Manruss, Manruss on all of them.
Nice. Yeah, I really encourage everybody to follow him. I'm pretty sure if most of you follow me, you've read Mark's work because me and a lot of my friends just constantly scream about all the crazy amazing stuff that he's doing. And right now there's so much Mark to get. I just want to make sure everybody knows like Death Ratioed is out. You get that at your comic book shop right now. That's from AWA. Really encourage you to get that. That's a one shot. It's a one and done, but you'll probably want to read it again later because after it simmers, you'll want to think about it again. My Bad, Volume 3, Escape from Peculiar Island. That's from Ahoy. Batman Dark Age is in its third issue. That's going at DC. Traveling to Mars, live on Kickstarter. It's funded, so it's happening. So if you back it, it's good. Ablaze is a great company. All right, so your money's safe. You're going to get your books. They've been around the block before. They're good people. It's a safe bet. It's a great book. Can't encourage you enough. You got to get that hardcover, and it comes with a Mark signature. If you can pony up and get the slipcase, I would do that. But
Yeah.
that's for this. That's for the select nerds. I'll get it. It's pretty. But yeah, I'm really stoked for you, man. And then when does X Factor drop? I know that's still a ways out, but
issue 1, it drops August 14th.
August. Okay. Still a little ways out. But the wait is going to be worth it. There's so much cool stuff going on in the Marvel office. Again, I can't say how ecstatic I am that you're there, man. I hope they realize what they fucking got. And I mean DC too, but you've been doing cool. I like and I'll quit there, but yeah, you're gonna do awesome, and I'm stoked.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Everybody go follow him. Please check out the Kickstarter. I will post links and stuff. If you go into the description where the video is, there'll be a link to Kickstarter. You can go there, check it out. Again, really encourage you to do that. I read the series again. Everything I've said about it is true. It deserved an Eisner. It should have won last year. I voted for it. I did. I was sad. I was sad it didn't win. It was a hard choice, but it's an Eisner award winning title, and you can get a beautiful version of it on Kickstarter. And if any of you weirdos are out there, you're like, who's this Mark Russell guy? Well, dive in. The water's warm and comfy, and there's so much to read. Oh my God, there's so much good Mark books to read. Red Sonja was another one that blew my mind. I read that. I think I read that right before the first time I interviewed you, and I loved how like you modernized it and like
it's
the
a blast
humor
from
in
the
it.
past.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Bring that in right at the end. But yeah, Mark is good people, great writer, worth a follow, worth a back on Kickstarter. Check out his stuff. I mean, I don't know what else to say about you, Mark.
I think you said it
about
all.
I think I did it. All right. Love more, hate less, read comics, follow me, Blake's Buzz everywhere. Be good to each other, be nice to each other, support indie comics and Marvel comics, because Mark's writing those too, and DC. Support the big two comics as well. They're all important. Pre-order them if you can, please. God, please. And Mark, unless you got anything else to add to that clusterfuck of an ending, I'll set you.
No, that was great.